Hi everybody, this is Shara from DIY Cave and I'm here to give you a little tutorial on stacker rings. And first of all, you're going to need some supplies. I have a list of tools here which I can send to you, but basically the things that you see here are going to be the necessary things. You've got a pair of chain nose pliers, some flush cutters, some wrap and tap pliers, some tweezers, a soldering block, something to protect your surface, some files or sandpaper, a nylon hammer, a chasing hammer if you want to texture your ring, a ring mandrel, a micro torch, and some butane. I'm going to use solder paste today and see how that goes. You're going to want some kind of ruler to measure out your wire. And then you're going to want a quench cup or a cooling cup. And over here I've got a pickle pot with some pickle warming up in it and some copper tongs and a rinsing pot. And that's what you need to get started, along with some wire. All right, first of all, I'm going to be using a 14 gauge yellow 14 karat gold fill. And I'm going to start by cutting my wire. And I don't know if you can see, this wire has a very sharp tip. So I'm going to use my flush cutters to give it a little trim to make it more flat. Then I'm going to use a ring sizing chart to figure out what size ring I need. And I know from what I'm making, I'm going to be cutting about 6 centimeters or 60 millimeters. So I'm going to place it on the ruler and I'm going to come down with the flush cutters using the flat side of the flush cutters, and I'm going to trim it. So now I have my wire, and both sides should be really nice and flat and clean. But the thing you want to do to make sure that they're nice and flat and clean is to use either a file. You can file it, which makes it pretty flat, or I like the method of using a piece of sandpaper sitting on a table. And my teacher taught me to do figure eights to make sure it's flat. We're going to do that to the other side as well. Okay, once you get those nice and flat, you're going to want to make a D. And the way that I do that is I use this, it's called a wrap and tap plier. This is a great set of pliers. It has several steps on it. And I'm going to grab it and I'm going to bend it around to be like a U shape. Once you've got a U shape, you're going to want to bend the edges in to make a D shape. It's going to look a little bit like a D ring. And if they're not exact at the beginning, you can certainly bend them to get them to match up. The idea is that you don't want to put a lot of your oils from your hands in this area, so try not to touch it. But you don't want to be able to see any bends or daylight in between your joints. And I'm seeing that it's a little bit bent. So I'm going to use the pliers to sort of bend it the correct way. All right, once you get it to this point, I don't know if you can see, but I have a little bit of daylight showing up between my area. So I'm going to take, to get some tension on this, to really pull it together, I'm going to twist it and push so that it has some tension. Then when I pull it apart gently and slide it back together, it's going to be pushed together. But I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, kind of making a crisscross motion. And just to make sure there's no daylight, and again, you want these pieces to be really nice and flush together. Sometimes I do this a few times. just to get it really nice. Alrighty. So once you have your ring nice and straight across from each other and on all sides, you're going to use your soldering block and your torch. I'm going to come in and take a little of this soldering paste, okay? And I'm going to squeeze a little bit out and put it right on that joint. Okay, I'm going to try to angle the camera down for you so you can really see what's going on. Alrighty. I've got some paste on that joint. And now I'm going to try lighting my torch. Now, torch lighting, you want to make sure you're not close to anything flammable. The torch I'm using, I'm going to have to lift you up a little bit here, has a pull down tab here. Some have a safety lever here, but you pull this down and you push this in and you get the flame going, and then you push this back to lock it, okay? This side over here controls how much flame is coming out, okay? And then you're going to get straight to work putting the flame, and as you can see, I'm going to hold the camera up a little. I'm coming in a little high to begin with. I'm just making gentle circles. I can see a little bit of discoloration happening. I'm coming in a little closer. And I don't know if you can see what's happening here, but I'm waiting for this solder to melt. And once it melts or flows, we're going to take the heat off of it. And I think it just flowed. So I'm going to turn this torch off. And I'm going to take this very hot ring, and of course the solder block is hot also, with the tweezers, and I'm going to put it in the quench cup. As soon as you bring it out, don't put it back on the solder block because it is still warm, but you can lift it right up into your hands, and you want to pull and tug and see if that joint held. And my joint held, and because it's now got some fire scale on it, we're going to take it over to, ooh, my chair is very noisy, to the pickle pot. And we don't ever want to put anything besides copper and your ring wire in the pickle pot. Well, mainly we don't want to put stainless steel in our pickle pot, because stainless steel will neutralize the pickle pot and it will no longer work. Plus, it will ruin your stainless steel. So I'm going to leave that in here for a couple minutes and we'll see what happens. All right, we're back. It's been a couple of minutes and I've just kind of made sure this looks shiny and the fire scale is off. I'm going to rinse it and let's see how we did. Oops. I'm a one-man or a one-woman camera show right now, so I apologize. I'm not used to doing this from this angle, but it's holding. One of the things I noticed, sometimes people stick it right on the mandrel and try to jam it on there, but these bends are really sensitive to that. I've noticed it's much better to use this wrap and tap plier, and I actually come in on the bends of the D, and I use, let me see if I can angle this up a little bit. I use this rubber side. There's like a coating on it. And I basically come in and just squeeze a little bit, and I'm moving it ever so slightly to kind of round it out again. And it's giving me a little trouble, but basically I'm trying to make it not quite so sharp of a D, but a little bit more rounded. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Sorry, I'm all over the place here. Okay. The next thing I do is when I put it on the mandrel, I'm not totally sure this is going to stay. When I put it on the mandrel, I don't jam it on there. I just put it to where it barely grabs. And then I come in with my nylon hammer, and I'm just careful about hammering. I'm just sort of going around in a circle, and I'm being gentle about it. And I'm just twisting the ring as I go. As you can see, it's getting a little more round, but it's not totally round yet, and the solder is still holding. I'm being gentle. I'm not jamming on it at all. There's a little portion that's sticking up here, so I'm gonna tap that a little bit. Again, if I was doing this with a metal hammer or really forcing it on the mandrel, it would probably break that solder. So my trick is to come in with these wrap and tap pliers and give it a little squeeze to soften those edges on the D. And then I'm just gently hammering around. I like the method where I'm holding it as I'm spinning. And look at that, it's getting nice and round. See? No breaks. The other thing you can do is you can hammer, let's see if I can get you a better angle, hammer straight down. Not this way, but actually down the mandrel, like this a little bit. Okay? Once you feel like it's pretty round again, you can't see any big gaps in it, you can go ahead and use your texturing hammer, which could be a number of things. We have a lot of different texturing hammers. And this will grow the ring. So actually using the nylon hammer will not increase the size at all, but the metal hammer will change the shape of the metal and actually make it larger. So I'm gonna try to film this. It's a very challenging thing because I'm gonna try to hit it and rotate at the same time. So let's see. I'm going to start. All right, I've gone around all the way once and it has grown almost a half a size. But it is still nice and round and the solder is still holding. I can see a little bit of that gap, so I'm going to come in with a piece of sandpaper and sand it a little. I prefer, as personal preference, to use a solder chip because I feel like it melts a little bit differently and it fills the gap, in my opinion, a lot easier, but that could be just because I'm used to it. This particular stuff, the paste, I feel like I don't have as much use. I just don't have as much control with the paste. So like right now I'm seeing kind of a gap here. It's almost like the solder flowed to the inside of the ring where it's nice and smooth, but sort of left the outside of the ring with a gap once I reshaped it. So I'm not super happy with that, but at least it's holding and I can try it on and it fits. Yay! I will show you how to do a solder. Sorry, the focus is kind of crazy. I will show you how to do a solder with a chip next. All right, now I have some 16 gauge wire, and I'm going to do the chip solder method. I have a paintbrush, and I have a solder pick, and you cannot see what I'm doing, so I'm going to change my angle. I have some flux, self-pickling flux, and I also have some chip solder, little tiny pieces of chip solder. So I'm going to take this ring and I'm going to dip my paintbrush into my flux, and I'm going to paint around this joint. Just get some flux on there. And then I'm going to use, I'm going to set it down. No, wait, I'm going to set it facing you so you can see the ring. I'm going to use my wet brush to pick up a piece of solder. It's really tiny. It's really hard to see, but I'm going to put that on the joint. Okay. If you want to be really safe and secure, you can grab a second little piece because these chunks are tiny. Just get that on your wet brush. And maybe on this one, I will stick it to the inside of the ring. Okay, so now I have a piece of chip solder on the top and one just slightly on the inside. And I'm going to go ahead and heat it with the torch, similar to before. And I'm going to try to film it in a way that you'll be able to see it, hopefully, and so forth. Let's get the torch started. Okay, now I'm going to come in, doing little circles. Sometimes when the piece of solder moves, that's why you might need the pick to be able to push it back. And actually, it's going to be too hard for me to hold my camera at the same time, so I'm just hoping you can see what's happening. And I'm going to come back and forth across. I'm looking for it to flow, and it just flowed, and I take my heat off. Turn off my torch, and I'm going to dunk this into the quenching cooling cup, and it held, and it looks like the solder flowed nicely. I don't know if you can see that, but it looks good. Okay, into the pickle pot. While that's pickling, I'm going to do some sterling silver in a 20 gauge, which is the thinnest I've ever used. I've never used this before. I've usually done 18 gauge or thicker. A 20 gauge is a pretty thin wire. It's what I use for ear wire that goes through the pierced part of your ear. But I'm trying to get this all lined up. And we're gonna try the paste again, since I'm still a newbie at this and I want to get it right. I am going to try doing a little bit of paste right on the joint. And I've been told you don't need a lot, but I am going to try putting a little paste on the inside as well. It comes out pretty slow. And we're going to just see how that works. I had the tension all perfect and now it's being crabby. So trying to reline it up with paste on it is quite interesting. Now I feel like I'm over pasting it. I really want it to work and not have any gaps. All right, here we go. Torch time. See if we can get this to flow. It's changing color a little, so I'm coming in a little lower. And I feel like I see it flow. but I feel like my ring has moved and I was running out of butane. I could hear it. Let's see what happens there. I think the ring actually shifted during the soldering, and yeah, it did not hold. I do not know how to solder a 20 gauge ring, but I will pickle this and try again. All right, while we're waiting for the silver one to pickle, this is my 16 gauge, rose gold, and I'm gonna go back to showing you how to gently get it on the mandrel. And again, I use the wrap and tap pliers first. That's the stepped ones. And I go in, here I'm gonna lift this camera up a little. I'm gonna go into the D shape where there's some gaps. I'm gonna squeeze it. I'm gonna go around to the other D side, squeeze it. I even might flip this around. If I can fit this little guy in there, I can squeeze on this end too, gently. And again, we're just trying to get that harsh piece out of there. Here we go. Okay, so I think it's about ready to go on the mandrel. As you can see, it's a little rounder than it was before. And again, I'm not going to force it. I'm just going to gently put it to where it stops. And I'm going to use my nylon hammer to tap it. And sorry about all the noise. Being just really gentle. It's already sliding down a little more. And I am turning it gently now. Going around. This was the chip solder, if you remember. And now that it's pretty round, I don't know if you can tell, it's pretty round, I'm going to use the mandrel to slide it down. Remember, I go sideways on the mandrel a little bit. I feel like that just finishes the circle motion for us. Gets it all circular. Okay, so nice and circular now. And we're going to add just a little texture because I need to grow it. I actually need it to grow almost a whole size. So we're going to give that a try. I am turning it slightly with my index finger as I hammer it. Now I'm back around. And it has grown almost a whole size. Got a pretty good stack of rings on my finger right now. Maybe I'll take a few of these off. And let's see if it fits. The nice thing about making your own jewelry is if it's too loose, you can always hammer it a couple more times and get it tighter. I just want to show you the difference between the two solders that I can see. Is this paste solder has left a little bit of a line. Not, like I said, not really on the inside as much, but definitely on the outside. Now this chip solder, first we have to find it. It's silver, whereas this is a rose gold ring. Oh, I see it. It's a very faint silver line, very faint. So when you're wearing it, it probably won't even show up. I am gonna hit this a couple more times with my hammer. First getting it down and looking for spots where I might want to give it a little more texture. Like I said, that grows it every time you hit it, so you don't want to go too much. I recommend trying it on several times. Once it is on and it feels good, you are set. Yeah, we made these 2 rings, and I've got one more in the pickle pot. We're going to try again with the paste. I feel like partly with this paste, or with this 20 gauge wires, it's really flimsy. So even when I'm trying to put tension on the wire, it's not staying tense. it's really easy just to wiggle it around. So I am trying real hard to get it to have tension, but also be in the right place. Ooh, it is tough to get lined up. Again, 20 gauge is pretty thin for a ring, as you can see. But I'm going to give it another shot with this here paste. Maybe I'll put more on. I don't know if that's helpful. I feel like the more I add, the more stuff is going to be on the ring to deal with, but who knows? Okay, I've added quite a lot of paste. We'll do a little more for good measure. Okay, and I feel like I might need a teensy bit more butane. Just a tip, when you're filling your butane torch, always have your torch upside down. And if your butane is squirting out everywhere, that means it is full. But you're just gonna put a little butane in here. That'll help this flame a little bit. Yeah, this one is almost empty. Let me grab another torch. Oh yeah, that one has some serious flame. All right, I'm gonna turn it down a little since it's such a thin ring. But we're gonna go ahead and work in circles. It's weird, that paste just falls right to the side. It doesn't like to stay on top, and it flowed already. I'm gonna turn my torch off. Gosh, it looks good. I put a lot of paste on it. Maybe we just need to paste it up. And I quenched it in the cooling cup. Let's see what happens. Hey, it's holding. Yahoo! All right, I'm gonna put it in the pickle and then we'll see if we can shape it without breaking it. All right, I've pulled the 20 gauge out of the pickle pot and it's still holding. So again, I'm gonna use my wrap and tap pliers. I'm angling up again, sorry about that. And I'm gonna come in on these little corners, especially this wire. It was very bent. Squeeze gently. Again, I'm trying to get this really sharp part out of here. And I'm going around. This ring is so soft, I could almost just bend it back into shape. But I'm going around in a circle and just squeezing, trying to get it shaped back to almost a circle, kind of a Franken circle. But we're going to put it on the mandrel. Again, not pushing down too hard. Okay, coming down the ring. This one's really sliding nicely. 20 gauge is definitely a thin wire. If your ring's a little wonky too, you can lay it down flat and usually on a steel bench block or something. Okay, it's nice and round. Now, if you want it to grow, you can give it some texture. I'm going to go ahead and texture. I've never textured a 20 gauge little wire, so I will have to kind of hold it. It's going to be a very tiny, thin ring. Nice thing too about texturing is it will work harden the metal a little bit, so it'll get a little stiffer, and that's a good thing. Now with this one, I can see the bulge where I put all that solder, but it is holding, so that's a good thing. I still need to make it a little bigger if I want it on that finger. Again, sorry for all the noises. Still not fitting. It will fit on my pinky just fine. Sorry, my hands are so dry. You will notice when you work with wire, your hands will be dry and dirty. It's getting so flat, but it is growing. Got it almost to the right size. Okay, I don't know if you can see the texture of the hammer giving it. It's pretty nice. Again, it's nice and stiff now, and it fits. I don't know if I need the extra ring, but it's a nice dainty thin one. Actually, if you did a bunch stacked with that, it would be very nice. Anyway, that is your tutorial. Hopefully that helps. Again, having a nylon hammer is very handy, or a rawhide hammer, and this wrap and tap plier that you can gently take care of those the really sharp bends in the D will help a lot. And I hope that helped.